Hi everyone, this is Tanya from Flying Dog Studio. Thank you for joining me as we take a look at the floral tones from Winsor Newton's Watercolor Pencils Studio Collection set. Now that set consists of 5 different pencil collections, and this one is just the floral tones. Now in previous videos I swatched this out and did a box opening, and also in a previous set I did a swatching, and that's what you saw me hold up right there. I'll put those videos down below if you would like to take a look at those before you start in with this video. But in this video, I decided only to use the floral tones. I'm only going to use those pencils. I'm going to try to use every pencil, but spoiler alert, there are 2 pencils that I just don't use, but these are wonderful pencils. Again, another spoiler alert. If you've watched the previous videos on this, you know that I loved these pencils. So I will hold up during the video the pencils that I'm using. I've slowed it down so that you can take a look. I'm also going to put my drawing of this up on the blog. I'll have that link down below as well. So if you want to copy what I'm doing and follow along, if you want to trace it, if you want to download my drawing of it, I'll do that drawing on Procreate, so it'll be a digital drawing, so the lines will be nice and thick for tracing if you would like to do that, and that will be available for you. Now I decided not to do like a big floral piece. I wanted to keep it kind of small, so I believe this paper is about a 7 by 7 square, and I'm doing an ode to Georgia O'Keeffe, and I do love some of Georgia O'Keeffe's work. Not all of her work, I'll have to say. There's some stuff that I don't like, but on a whole, I love her pieces of flowers where you zoom in and get the details. And I know there's a lot of controversy out there about Georgia O'Keeffe. You know, I have a degree in not just biology, but also in art. So I know I've studied this stuff, I understand, but I think she's an important woman in history, especially for artists. And so I taught her art to my students, and I love to make art like hers as well. And you'll see in this close-up, as I'm coloring along, I am using kind of a circular motion with these pencils, and I'm using also my paper. Everything that I'm using, I'm going to list below. My paper is a cold press paper, and you're going to see texture on it because pencils will color on the surface. They don't get down in the valleys, they stay on the hills. So you're going to see some texture in it, but once we put the water on, that's going to disappear. When I color with just straight color pencils, and I don't do a lot of colored pencil drawing anymore. I used to be a watercolor / colored pencil artist, and I mainly did portraits, but I don't do pencils anymore because arthritis has kind of taken that ability away from me to sit for very long and grab a pencil. So I hesitated in getting this set, but I really wanted to try it out. And if you are limited physically by, say, arthritis or fibromyalgia or anything where you have trouble gripping things with your hands and coloring for a long period of time, I do recommend these pencils because you don't have to color hard. You can color very softly. This entire piece, and you know, is speeded up on here. This is a 44-minute video, so if you make it to the end, kudos to you. But the entire piece took me about, I'd say, an hour and 45 minutes to 2 hours to do, and it took me a couple of days because, as I've said in past videos, I'll work and then I take a break, and then I'll work and then I'll take a break. So, but altogether, I kept up with it because some of you have asked how long it takes me to get through a piece once I sat down to work on it. And that's how long this one took me. But again, it is not an extremely detailed piece. I did zoom in on it because I didn't want the entire piece, and it is a smaller format. This is not large, just a 7 by 7. So that's how long it took me to work on this. Now, if you've watched other videos, you know I like to put down kind of a base color on everything. I did some leaves back at the end of last year with the Derwent ink tints, and we'll talk about Derwent ink tints as compared to regular watercolor sets. Again, it's apples to oranges, but we're still going to talk about it. And that piece I put down like an entire wash of yellow before I started because that was kind of the base of everything. They were fall leaves. On this one, I decided not to do that, because the background on the piece, on the original photo, and I'll talk about that in a second as well, that was white, and I wanted to leave the background white to see how well these pencils cover an area. If if they're going to be too light, if they're going to be too dark, how well they're going to blend together. I really wanted to see how well the pencils did just on white paper, so I did not do an underwash on anything. Now, for my reference photo, I like Unsplash, and I've talked about that in previous videos, and I'll put the link below that'll take you to the exact reference photo I used on this, and that was an entire rose. It was not a zoomed in piece of the rose, but I didn't want to do the entire rose. I just wanted a portion of it. If I'd done the whole thing, I could have used all the pencils but one probably. I might have used the second pencil. I'm not sure. I'd have to look at the colors on that. But I really wanted to zoom in just on this area. I love the colors, and I could tell that I could use almost everything in the set, and that was my goal. So I will put that down below. And if you're unfamiliar with Unsplash, it's a website for freelance photographers where they put their work out there, and you are free to use some of that work, and it'll be noted if you can use it. They do ask that you give credit to the artist in whatever area you're using it, whether it's something like this for reference or you're using it in an ad, whatever you're doing, you give them credit for that. So you're going to see credit to that artist down below and a link to their work on Unsplash. They do have an app. You don't have to look it up directly online. You can look on the app, and that's what I like to do. I just keep it on my iPad. That way I can just download all of my reference photos. Now, I'm layering on this. Sometimes I like to put down one color. Like if the main base is pink, you can see I'm using that antique rose earlier. For a lot of this piece, it'll be the antique rose. That's what the pink is. I would put that down, and then I would come back and add darker colors. There's the antique pink. I would come back and put darker colors on top and then activate those with water. But instead of doing that, I'm putting all of my colors down at the same time. We're just going to let them blend right on here. We're not going to layer them as far as putting down a layer and activating with water and letting it dry. We're just going to mix all the colors on here just like I would if I were coloring with regular colored pencils that you don't activate with water. I would do it just like this. So that's how I'm going to do it, just to see how everything works. So it's kind of an experiment for me, since I haven't used these pencils other than to swatch out the colors and see how they mix together. And if you get this set, I do recommend that you do that so that you know how they work before you start putting them down on paper, how much pressure you need. And you do have to be careful with pressure because these are colored pencils. They're not ink-based pencils. They're more of a wax-based pencil. You are going to get a little bit of that waxy buildup on there. So, and there's my antique pink. So I'm going to come in and color most of the rest of it with that antique pink and then start coming back. For me, it was hard to decide how much pressure to put. I know if I put too much, I'm going to get that waxy buildup. And then if I try to put other colors on top, they are just not going to blend in as well. They're just going to set on top. And I want everything to activate together. I don't want a really thick, kind of a painterly look on it. I want it to look more like watercolor. So I'm going with the same idea I do on everything, and that is I'm only going to go lightly on this. I can always come back and add more, but if I put too much on, it may be difficult to fix. So I'm going to keep going back and forth. And again, you can see I'm using that circular motion on here. I don't want the back and forth motion because that could leave pencil marks and streaks. And going in a circular motion encourages you to use the same pressure. This is the technique I taught to all of my students with regular colored pencils, and it's what I recommend with these as well. So I'm going to let you watch me work, and I'm going to hop back on in just a minute when I can hopefully talk better, and we'll talk just a bit more. All right, I've already colored this area, and you can see I'm coming back with that burnt carmine, and I'm adding some more color on top. And this is what I'm talking about. To work lightly, you can always come back. I know the pink, that antique pink, when it's dark and you put a lot of pressure, it's really, really bright. And I'm adding a color on top that's going to make it even brighter, even darker. So I want to be careful, but it's sort of like the story, if you give a mouse a cookie, you're going to have to give it a glass of milk. Well, once I start coloring another area a little bit, I realize underneath, this is going to be darker. This is going to be lighter on top, so I'm going to have to add some more color. So that's what I'm doing there. And in the midst of all of this, I wanted to show you what I'm dealing with while I'm trying to work. And this is my daughter's dog, Hamlet. And he was outside playing. We live in kind of a rural area in southern United States. And if you're not from America, everyone here owns guns. If you are from America, you know everyone here owns guns. And down south, I'm just going to say it, we have a lot of rednecks down here, and they will shoot their guns anytime during the day. You will hear guns just going off in our neighborhood, and our dog is so frightened of it. Bless his little heart. So he came in just terrified. We put his little vest on him that he was wearing. That's a thunder jacket, and it helps him when he gets scared and has anxiety. So he came in and he was so upset. So I just moved his little, we call it his office bed. So he sits in the office with me, and he helps me, and I'm using air quotes for helps me do my art. He's one of the reasons I have to voice over all of the time. And so he hid under there for quite some time because he was frightened. And if you're not from America, that might sound shocking that we hear gunshots all the time where we live, but we do. We live in, like I said, a rural area. It's very wooded. There are a lot of people who hunt. This is not hunting season, but there's always someone almost every day shooting a gun, whether it's a rifle, a handgun, a high-powered rifle, a muzzle loader. People still shoot muzzle loaders around here. So we do hear that. That's just a part of our daily life, and it actually is frightening. So I understand why Hamlet was scared. And we call him Hammy, by the way. We don't just call him Hamlet, we call him Hammy. So we're going to move on here. I am starting with some colors that are going to brighten it up just a bit. And you're going to see that I will bring in some yellow in here, and that, I've been using the brighter orange, and I'm layering that on top because what I have found, it doesn't really matter the order in which you lay down the color. It's all going to mix together on here. And if I were doing this as a regular colored pencil project, I wouldn't start with the light colors. I would start with the dark colors, and I would build up to the light colors so I could do what's called burnishing, which is build up that waxy build up on the end, and it allows you to blend colors together and to smooth things out. But when you're working with these colored pencils, I'm just going back and forth. So if you're a colored pencil artist, you're going, she's doing that in the wrong order. It does not matter if you're doing it with watercolored pencils. So if you see me going back and forth, that's what I'm doing. Doesn't matter. They're all going to blend together once I put that water on them, and they're going to turn into an entirely different color. So you basically have to just be mindful of what colors you need to put together in order to get the shades you need for that area. There is a lot of detail down in this bottom area, and you'll see my pencil lines in there, and I really don't follow them completely and fill in all the detail. I decided not to do that. This I wanted to jump on and mention is why I think it's very important to do the color swatching before and kind of see how the color is going to mix together. You can see I'm putting down that olive green. There's not green in the middle of this flower, but there are some dark brown spots. And I know from my swatching the colors I can put together, which is the green and that pink, and it's going to give me the brown that I need. And you'll see me come back when I have to add another layer of color on to kind of bring everything back up after I've done the water, that I add some more colors down there as well. And so that's why it's important to test these colors out. I have that little color guide setting off to the side, the one you saw at the very beginning, and you'll see me occasionally move that around so I can see everything on there. But anytime I have the pink down and I want it to be a little more brown, I will just add the green on top of it, or the orange. I add the green on top of that as well, so that I can get the nice brown colors that were in the piece. Just a few more areas to color here, and then we'll be ready to add the water. But I did want to show you, these are the pencils that I used in the set. I used 8 pencils, and I had these 2 pencils left over, the violet and then just the green. And just a little update. Here is Hammy. He has finally calmed down and he has gone to sleep. And then my daughter put on the ledge her phone, and it has like a crackling fireplace sound, and he loves that, so he went right to sleep. These are the supplies I'm using to activate. I have my Winsor Newton brushes. I kept that flat brush just in case, but I have the size 6 round and the size 3 round because I thought those would be good sizes to work in these areas. And again, I didn't know if I would use the flat brush, but I ended up not using it. We're going to start with the size 3, and I keep that microfiber cloth handy because I don't want a lot of water on the paper. If you get too much water, it's just going to blend out too much. And you'll see if I'm going from one shade to another, I will go ahead and wipe my brush to the side and then get a little bit more water on my brush. You're also going to see that every time I change a color, I want to keep my brush clean. But if I'm wanting to work from light to dark, I will start with the light area and then move to the dark area. The top of that petal I just did was an exception. I went ahead and did all the dark pink, wiped and cleaned my brush, and then went from the outside in and moved my brush from the light area to the dark area. And you can see that's what I'm doing here to make sure that I get that nice gradual light to dark area. You don't want to take just a wet brush and go over things willy-nilly, because then you're going to mix all of your colors together. So you can see I had a dark area and a light area. I activated the light area, and then I was able just to push that color down to the dark area, and I got a nice sharp edge there. So these pencils are really easy to work with. And, I'll tell you what they remind me of. I don't know if any of you had this when you were growing up, but I had this and I absolutely loved it. My mother didn't like for me to make a mess in the house. Can you imagine a future artist? She didn't want me to get paint or anything anywhere. But my daughter and I, when she was growing up, we had stuff everywhere. But she got me these coloring pages that had the color on them already. And the only thing I had to do was just get a wet paintbrush. I just had a cup of water and a little paintbrush and just go over all of the little areas of color, and it would activate them into watercolor. So I really enjoyed doing that, and this reminds me of that. The color's already down and I'm just activating it, because I learned when I was younger, you can't just take your brush and go from, a pink to a green, because it's just going to mess everything up. So be sure and clean your brush. So that was a story from my childhood. I don't know if they still make those anymore, but if they do and you have children, go get some, or grandchildren. I mean, kids love those. I loved those. I really did. So I'm just going to keep working, as you see here, trying to get those areas in. And that's a dark area. And then I'm going to clean my brush, and I'm going to come back and work on that light area, and I'm going to push it back in. So sometimes I'll do the light area first and push it into the dark area, and sometimes I'll do that dark area and then go down to the light area and push that color into the dark, like I'm doing in this, so I get that nice edge going all the way around. So this is my process. I'm going to keep doing that, and I'll hop back on in just a minute. One petal left and I'll have this entire flower, the paint activated, and I hope you noticed that down in the lower left how that green and pink turned into a brown for me. So that was awesome. Now once I finish this, I take a look at it and I decide that the lower portion, lower left hand portion needs to be a little bit darker. So I let it completely dry. I pull out the colors that I need, and we're going to start with Antique Pink, and I'm going to go back over everything I've already done. And you're going to see a little texture on this, and I'll show you a close-up when we get done. And I don't know if you can really see the shine on it, but I can feel that it's sort of getting that waxy buildup under there. But I need that. I need it to get a little bit darker. I just don't want to apply too much pressure. So going over the areas, and you can actually leave it like this if you wanted to. You could come in and you could activate the watercolor and then come back with the colored pencil again and put the colored pencil on top. When I did portraits that were a combination of watercolor and colored pencil, this is the way I would do it. I would start with regular watercolors, watercolor, all the base underneath, and then come back and get all the details with colored pencil on top. And it made colored pencil portraits and anything I was doing with colored pencil so much easier if I had that watercolor base on there. So this whole area underneath the flower and underneath the petals, because we're kind of looking up under the rose, they were it was like a little bit darker, and I needed the top to be lighter. So you're going to see me just continue using that circular motion and adding some more of the colors on. I will be bringing back that green. I didn't pull that down, but you'll see me reach up in a few minutes and grab that because I want to make that brown area just a little bit darker, and I'm going to add that green to some more areas down underneath that I had not done before, because again, that's going to add a good shadow with those colors, and that's what I'm wanting. You'll also see that my pencil marks stay in this piece. Some areas they kind of disappear, and in some areas they're still there. With watercolor, it's perfectly acceptable for the colored pencil line, or for the I shouldn't say, I've been saying colored pencil so much, but for your original drawing, your contour pencil lines to stay, that is perfectly acceptable. If you don't want them to be there, you can lighten those up with a kneaded eraser. You saw me doing that at the beginning. There was a spot up at the top I wanted a little bit lighter. And honestly, I wish I had gone a little bit lighter on all of my pencil lines on here. Just that's my own personal preference, but it turned out like this, and that's fine with me. It was, again, just an experiment, but if I had to do it over, I would probably lift more of my lines than what I did. Finishing up with that olive green, and then let's take a look at this up close. You can see all the texture right in there. It was starting to get a little shiny, so I knew it was time to stop. Oh, and I forgot, with this burnt carmine, there was a little area on that petal I wanted to get a little bit darker. So I'm holding my breath here, and I'm hoping that coming back and adding colors on top, that it's not going to totally mess up what's underneath. And good news, it did not. If you're working with Derwent ink tints pencils, those are ink based, so once they're down you can kind of lift them, but you really have to work at it, and then you damage your paper. So basically once they're down because they're ink based. These are not ink based. So I thought, gee, I hope when I add the color on top, it's just like layering with any kind of watercolor, that it will dry more permanently and that you can just layer on top and it will work well, and it does. So when I do this again in the future, if I use these floral, by themselves, I'm going to try what I have done before, which is put down like the pink base color and then come back and layer colors on top, activate a layer, let it dry, come back, add more on top. But I didn't want to do that with this one. I wanted to see how it would work, just putting everything down at once. But I had to come back and make all of this just a little bit darker. And you can see, I told you that antique pink gets pretty bright. And it did on this. It actually did, but I needed it to. So that was a good thing. I'm going to keep adding the water on here, and I'll have the final piece at the end that you can take a look at. But before I hop off, I wanted to thank you so much for joining me. If you were new, thank you for hanging around to see what I do on here. And I want to say we are a community that works together. So if you own these pencils, if you have any questions, if you have any advice, if you own them, if you have any questions, if you've never used them before, please feel free to put those in the comments. If you see a question down there somebody has and I haven't answered it yet, feel free to answer it, and then I'll hop on as soon as I see it. I will have each one of the curated sets from this Winsor & Newton studio collection. I will do this for each one. I'm going to do a swatching of the colors to see how they mix together, and then I will have a piece like this where I only use the colors from that set, and then I'm hoping to put all of the 5 sets together and do a one giant piece with them together. So I have that coming up. I also have, and I think it will come after this video, I think I'm just going to throw a little video out there to show you my new fountain pen my husband got me for my birthday. I absolutely love it. I think I'm even going to get rid of my Sailor Fude de Manon. Don't tell them, but I think I'm going to get rid of my Sailor Fude de Manon and just replace it with the new pen that my husband got for me. And again, I didn't mention it, but anything that I've mentioned in this video, whether it's the paper or it's the Winsor & Newton pencils or it's the site where I get my reference photos, Unsplash, none of those people sponsor me. These are just things that I use, and if they help you out, I think that would be wonderful. So those are the things I have coming up. I hope you'll join me for them, but until then, my friends, I will see you in the next one.